This is my story, the story of my life, the Christine Keeler story.
John Profumo, a cabinet minister whose name is now synonymous with political scandal, was not the first in his role to engage in an affair with a call girl. However, in a twist of spectacularly poor judgment, he picked a mistress who was also entangled with a Russian spy, crafting a recipe for disaster. On June 5, 1963, his embarrassed admission and subsequent resignation did more than just bring his career to a screeching halt. It threw open the curtains on the most sensational sex scandal of the century. As the scandalous details unraveled, Profumo's disgrace became a foregone conclusion. But his personal downfall nearly dragged the British government along with it, teetering on the edge of a political abyss. Central to this sordid tale of sex, deceit, and espionage was Stephen Ward, a society osteopath with so-called healing hands. These hands, it seems, did more than alleviate physical ailments. They opened doors to the upper echelons of society. Dr. Ward, the son of a clergyman, was portrayed at his trial as nothing short of a scoundrel, a thoroughly filthy fellow, and a wicked, wicked creature. However, by today's standards, his motives were somewhat pedestrian. He had a penchant for befriending the influential and powerful, many of whom he encountered as patients. And he had an eye for beautiful women. Not exactly in the league to woo society, ladies, Ward turned his attention to beautifying girls from modest backgrounds. He'd set them up in his flat, grooming them for the big leagues. Many of his discoveries were nightclub workers who, upon meeting Ward, were introduced to his high society acquaintances. This often was their stepping stone into the world of high-class prostitution. In a way, Ward was like a twisted fairy godmother, turning Cinderellas into something quite different. Christine Keeler, a captivating brunette, found herself in London's vibrant nightlife scene, where her job, by her own admission, entailed little more than strolling around with barely any clothes on. It was in this glittering yet shadowy world that she encountered Stephen Ward, an osteopath with a talent for charming and influencing those around him. Ward, recognizing something in Christine, drew her into his orbit, inviting her to his flat. There, she was introduced to a hedonistic lifestyle filled with drugs and orgies, and was persuaded to engage with his influential clients. Ward, in his professional life, catered to the elite, a clientele list that boasted of the wealthy, influential, and those with titles. He wasn't just an osteopath. He was also an accomplished artist who had sketched many of these distinguished figures. Known for his engaging conversations during treatments, Ward often expressed a rather unusual ambition. He wanted to travel to Moscow to capture Russian leaders in his drawings, with Nikita Khrushchev being a particular interest. However, he found himself stymied by the challenge of obtaining a visa, a detail that underscored the intricate and potentially perilous nature of his connections and ambitions. In the intricate web of relationships that Stephen Ward navigated, one notable connection was with Sir Colin Coote, the editor of the Daily Telegraph. Coote, who sought Ward's treatment for lumbago, introduced him to Captain Yevgeny Ivanov, a Russian naval attaché he had met during a visit by Soviet officials to the newspaper. Ivanov, known for his fondness for alcohol and women and proficient in English, quickly struck up a friendship with Ward. Another significant figure in Ward's network was Lord Astor, one of England's wealthiest men. Their acquaintance began when Astor sought Ward's medical expertise after a hunting accident. This relationship led to Astor allowing Ward the use of a cottage on his Cliveden estate. It was here that Ward would host lively weekend gatherings with his friends. During one of these weekends, two of Ward's guests, Ivanov and Christine Keeler, began a romantic relationship. In a separate notable incident at Cliveden, Christine Keeler had a rather embarrassing encounter. While bathing nude in the estate's private swimming pool, she was caught off guard by the arrival of Lord Astor, his wife, and another couple. In a playful yet embarrassing moment, Ward prevented her from retrieving her swimsuit, leaving her to cover herself with a towel. Among the guests was John Profumo, the war minister in the Conservative government, accompanied by his wife, actress Valerie Hobson. Profumo was immediately captivated by Keeler. After the weekend at Cliveden, he contacted Keeler through Ward, borrowed a ministerial car, and took her on a tour that included the Houses of Parliament and the Prime Minister's residence on Downing Street. Their relationship escalated quickly, with Profumo providing gifts, money, and engaging in secret trysts with Keeler at Ward's flat. Interestingly, Ivanov was also involved with Keeler during this time, leading to a precarious situation where both men were almost encountering each other during their visits. This complex situation attracted the attention of MI5, the British counter-espionage agency. Initially, MI5 had vetted Ward and deemed him clean. However, experts who later researched the case suggested that MI5 was actually exploiting Ward's connections. They reportedly used him to provide discreet female company for visiting diplomats and sought his help in gathering information about Ivanov, who they suspected of being a spy. The involvement of John Profumo with Christine Keeler raised serious concerns within MI5. They suggested that Sir Norman Brooke, the cabinet secretary, have a discussion with Profumo. Sir Norman attempted to alert Profumo about the security risks he had inadvertently become entangled in. However, Profumo misinterpreted this as a mere warning to distance himself from Ward and his circle. Profumo, deeply infatuated with Keeler, failed to grasp the gravity of the situation. Meanwhile, Captain Ivanov, well aware of MI5's attempts to trap him, diligently reported every development back to Moscow. He discovered that Ward possessed a collection of pornographic photographs, some featuring politicians and diplomats with women. Ivanov sent copies of these photographs to his superiors in Russia, presumably for potential blackmail purposes. Profumo eventually ended his affair with Keeler, believing he had averted any scandal by doing so. He sent her a farewell letter, likely thinking this would close the chapter on this episode. However, the situation took a bizarre turn. Ward expressed a desire to be with a black woman and asked Keeler to find one for him. This request led them to a cafe frequented by West Indians. Here, Keeler met Lucky Gordon and agreed to be with him, provided he found a black woman for Ward. The relationships between these individuals grew increasingly complicated, leading to intense jealousies and confrontations. One such incident involved a violent altercation between Gordon and Edgecombe, Keeler's new partner, resulting in Gordon needing stitches for a facial wound. The drama continued to escalate. Keeler left Gordon for Edgecombe, who later became jealous and violent. When Keeler sought refuge with Ward, now living with another woman, Marilyn Rice Davies, also known as Mandy, Edgecombe attempted to confront her. He fired shots at Ward's door when she refused to open it, leading to his arrest. This incident marked the beginning of the end for the secrecy surrounding the scandal. By the time of Edgecombe's trial, Keeler had vanished. Instead of testifying, she was sharing her story with anyone who would listen. At a Christmas party, her tale caught the attention of a friend of Labour politician George Wigg and a journalist. Soon, rumours about the scandal began to circulate through the corridors of power and down Fleet Street, setting the stage for the public unravelling of one of the most notorious political scandals in British history. Christine Keeler decided to sell her story to the Sunday Pictorial. Although it was written, the story was never published. However, word of this reached Profumo, who reacted with astonishing audacity. He sought meetings with the Attorney General and senior Conservative Party officials, vehemently denying any affair with Christine. He even threatened to sue for libel if such allegations were published. On March 21, 1963, George Wigg, leveraging parliamentary privilege, openly discussed the rumours about the cabinet minister and the call girl in the House of Commons. Profumo responded by drafting a statement, which he later read to the House, denying the affair and threatening legal action against any scandalous allegations made outside the House. Christine, in an interview, seemingly supported Profumo's denial, by describing their relationship as a mere friendship beyond reproach. Profumo also repeated these denials to Prime Minister Harold Macmillan, who, adhering to a gentleman's code of conduct, believed his minister's word. Despite Profumo's efforts, the rumors persisted, especially abroad, leading him to sue an Italian magazine. Meanwhile, the police received anonymous tips accusing Ward of living off immoral earnings and being protected by influential friends. When questioned, Keeler admitted to sleeping with Profumo and provided detailed descriptions of his bedroom. Ward, aware of the police investigation, wrote letters to influential figures in an attempt to avoid prosecution, mistakenly sending one to the opposition leader, Harold Wilson. As the scandal escalated, Prime Minister Macmillan ordered an inquiry by the Lord Chancellor. Guilt eventually overtook Profumo. After confiding in his wife, he decided to confess. Cutting short a holiday, they returned to Britain, where Profumo admitted to the Prime Minister's private secretary that he had indeed slept with Keeler and that his previous statement was false. He resigned immediately, forgoing the tradition of personally handing his seals of office to the Queen. Profumo's resignation was followed by Macmillan's resignation due to ill health. The Conservative Party suffered a heavy defeat in the next general election, with many attributing the loss to the Profumo Affair. The tragedy extended beyond Profumo's confession. Stephen Ward was brought to trial, charged with living off the immoral earnings of Keeler and Mandy Rice Davies. The trial of Stephen Ward took a dramatic turn when, during the judge's summing up, Ward took a drug overdose and was unable to attend the continuation of the court proceedings the next day. Found guilty in his absence, the judge deferred sentencing until Ward could appear in court. However, Ward never regained consciousness and died on August 3, 1963. The Profumo Affair prompted an exhaustive inquiry led by the esteemed Judge Lord Denning. It wasn't until years later, however, that Stephen Ward's connections with MI5 were thoroughly investigated. These links were detailed in David Lewis's book, Sexpionage, and Nigel West's A Matter of Trust, MI5, 1945-72. Nigel West's book led the Sunday Times to conduct its own inquiries. They spoke to a retired senior MI5 officer who suggested that the court might have been informed of Ward's work for the security service, implying that this information could have potentially saved his life. The officer expressed regret over Ward's death, stating that MI5 did not anticipate the tragic outcome. The aftermath of this extraordinary drama saw varied fates for its key players. Yevgeny Ivanov quietly returned to Moscow, where he received praise and promotion. Mandy Rice Davies, at the age of 19, left the country to sing on the continental cabaret circuit, later marrying an Israeli airline steward she met in Tel Aviv. They established a chain of restaurants and clubs before divorcing, after which Mandy returned to Britain and found success as an actress. For Christine Keeler, Ward's death marked the end of her glamorous life. She had been captivated by the allure of fame and flattered by the attention from influential men. Lord Denning, in his inquiry, urged leniency in judging her due to her young age and the manipulative environment she was exposed to. Post-scandal, her life was marred by 2 failed marriages, a brief stint in jail, a custody battle for her child, and financial struggles, leading her to live in a council flat in West London. John Profumo, in the aftermath, dedicated himself to unpaid work at Toynbee Hall in London's East End, aiding the poor, mentally handicapped, and others facing social challenges. His efforts in the following years were recognized with a CBE, and he enjoyed friendly interactions with the Queen. He was appointed to the board of a major insurance company founded by his grandfather, joined the board of visitors of a psychiatric prison, and was even considered for a peerage. This marked a significant turnaround for Profumo, who managed to rebuild his life and reputation following the scandal. Thank you for joining us on this remarkable trip through history. If you have any thoughts about today's story, or if there are other historical mysteries or heroes you'd like us to explore, please leave a comment below.
These rocks don't lose their shape. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. Well, I'm old enough to put me in papers, put me in trials, be arrested, so I might just well be old enough to write my own book.
What are you going to tell us in this book that we don't know already about you?
Well, lots of men that I met in my life that you haven't heard of. Friends.
Well, now you're a great one for the unexpected. What can we expect from you next?
Well, you never know.
Near a place called Uxbridge.
When did you first come to London? At what age?
I should say roughly about 16 or 17, I'm not quite sure. And I first came to London, had a job as a waitress, and then went on to Mara's Cabaret Club.
That was the beginning of your career in show business.
Yes.
What are your ambitions?
At the moment, my ambitions are to become an actress. Hello? How lovely to hear from you.
I wish that at that time I had been older, so that I would have been able to have answered or spoke up for myself in Stephen. But I was only a young girl.
What do you think that you can bring to men-only readers? Where really can you help them?
By just purely, sex is sex, and whatever two people do in a room, as long as they don't frighten the horses, as a friend of mine says, is fair enough. I think I can answer things in an intelligent and an unbitter way to somebody who has problems with their girlfriend or the general problems that happen in everybody's life.
Do you regard yourself as particularly sexually experienced?
Yes, and I say that not by loads of different men. I say this purely by two husbands and different boyfriends that I've lived with over the years.
Was there anything in the accusations of involvement in spying at all? Were you in a position to spy?
Stephen had been to the Foreign Office a few times because of his relationship with Ivanov, and he wanted to become a special agent, but they wouldn't have him.
Stephen Ward wanted to become...
a special agent because of his friendship with Ivanov. He wanted to be an agent with the Foreign Office, but they wouldn't have him.
Any idea why?
Well, I don't know. I suppose because he talked a lot. He was a great talker. But he did try.
And that was because of his friendship with Ivanov?
With
So he thought he could get things out of Ivanov, which he could pass on to the Foreign Office, is that it?
Yes. But they refused him. The Foreign Office refused him. And quite honestly, what Stephen did from there on could well have been spying.
How do you mean?
Well, he's had a great friendship with Ivanov, and he was a communist sympathizer. And he had asked me to ask Profumo when the Germans were going to get the bomb, which I laughed, and he made a joke about it. And then another time I had asked him, I did say to him, I think Yevgeny's a spy. And he said, oh, there's money in it. And also, what didn't go well at all at the time was that I had been to the Russian embassy and delivered 3 letters that Stephen had given me to pass across, apparently to Yevgeny Ivanov, that he couldn't make it for bridge or something. Looking back, he could have well have phoned. But, that was that.
Do you think there may have been some information in those letters?
I don't know. The past is the past. I mean, I know I was never a spy. Stephen, I can't speak for.
What have you learnt from the failure of your 2 marriages, neither of which lasted very long?
Well, for me, at my age, I've learned never to get married again because I have my children now, and I would never marry again. Not in a bitter matter. I think that marriage really, if you're having children, I think I'm still old-fashioned enough to think that perhaps one ought to be married, to have children. I believe that people should be faithful to each other. I mean, we all make mistakes, but I do believe that one must live by general codes and principles, and we do in our country, really.
Do you feel that the breakup was your fault or the fault of the 2?
Oh, no, I ran away from both of them. I know it was...
Why did you run away?
Because I don't think that I really want to live under a man's influence. I feel I've got too much to do, or I have felt this, or there's always been something. If it wasn't when I was married, if it was the last, 2 of my husbands, I always felt that I had to do something else. I had to sort out this mess that happened in 1963. So I could never really just lay under or do what a man said or didn't say.
Did they marry you because you were Christine Keeler?
No. No, I don't think that at all.
Did they marry you in spite of the fact that you were Christine Keeler?
In spite of the fact, and I think that they loved me. And I loved them, whatever that means, love, for the time. I'm a very serious-minded person, and if I have a relationship with somebody, I take them very seriously, and indeed they take me very seriously too.
But neither of them lasted very long. In fact, they were very short marriages, weren't they?
Yes, both. In fact, I've never really, even the men that I have lived with since, I've never really stayed with very long.
Why is that? Do you feel dominated by them?
I haven't met the right one.
Do you expect her?
Yes, yes. Yes.
You say you had 2 children. How do the children live with your past?
Well, my older boy doesn't know. How does he take it? Neither one of them really know anything about me because, as you know, this is the first television interview I've ever given, and the newspapers never would speak to me. They'd just revert to old newspaper clippings, which were never true anyway. So, they really don't know anything about me anyway, except know me as their mother.
But if you wanted to forget 1963 and the Christine Keeler of that time, you wouldn't be selling that name, Christine Keeler, to men only, would you?
Well, I've told you I'm going to commercialise now, and that this is the first time in my life that I am in control of myself. So I'm able to. And I might as well, because they won't leave me alone. So I'm commercialising. And I think that my morals are as good as anybody else's. In fact, I have high principles, or I do have a moral code of which I've always lived by in my life. That is not to hurt people or to do cheap things or, in this manner.
So your motto might be, now, publish and be damned.
Yes. Yes. However you represent me, at least now, I get paid for it.